Finally, we've got some new Overwatch 2 details. All right, guys, welcome to the channel. Let's check this out. So, what we're going to talk about in this video is Overwatch 2 tank balance and also some Overwatch 2 DPS balance. Basically, we've got a post, guys, from the community manager, Andy B, a new community manager as well to the Overwatch team. And you can see they're trying to be more communicative, which I think is awesome. We need more communication. And I've always been a strong proponent of this. I believe they don't talk to us enough. We know they are making Overwatch 2. This is not a secret. I don't know why they can't talk to us more about what they're working on. Giving us even a little post like this on the forum, they make a world of difference. We feel like we're involved in the development of the game. Obviously, we're not involved in the development of the game, but we feel part of it, right? We feel like, hey, we're along for the ride. We can see bits of information. Because like I said, this is not a secret, Overwatch 2. We know it's a thing which has been worked on for years and years and years and all that good stuff. But there is one caveat with all this, and I think this is... It's very... We really need to shine a light on this. So, when the PvP stream happened, I remember having a little quick chat with the devs, and they did say then, you know, it's very difficult for us to talk about Overwatch 2 because, well, we're playing Overwatch 2, everyone's playing Overwatch, and Overwatch 2 is totally different. In fact, I'll just show you what Aaron Keller said actually on the stream, so listen to this.
We've been playing it in this state for a long time too, and it's always so tough to play a game a certain way at work and then go home and it operates in a totally different way, and you're playing with people online and you can't help but think, like, if only you knew like, what I was playing, you know, every day.
So there you go, the new games director basically saying, look, we've been playing this game for a long time and it's hard for us to sort of show you guys or talk to you guys in terms you understand, because we're coming at it from an Overwatch 2 perspective, not an Overwatch perspective. So when we talk about 5v5, if we go, yeah, the game's 5v5, and we think of that as Overwatch players right now, we're like, oh my god, the tank is just going to die. Because we're looking at it through the lens of Overwatch, which isn't our fault. That's the fault of Blizzard for not communicating to us enough. So don't listen to them, guys. If they ever say to you, like, oh, yeah, listen, you've got to be aware of this. It's like, no, come on, they could have actually given us more info, but whatever. The fact is, Overwatch 2 is a different game, right? That's what we've got to realize. So this post is great because what it does is gives us more insight into the way they want to balance the heroes in the game, the tanks and the DPS. But we're going to focus a little bit on the tanks to begin with. So let's get stuck into this because it's beautiful. Oh, and by the way, this is it's on the Overwatch forums, which have kind of been dead for a while in terms of blue posts. So a blue post is basically an Overwatch developer or somebody from the community team. Now, obviously, Jeff would post a lot on the forums. Jeff's no longer at Blizzard, so he's not going to post on the forums, is he? But the top comment makes me laugh because it's from a guy called Tornado7909, and it says, Andy, I must say it's nice seeing you talking with the community on here. Most people would just take one look at this place and pour bleach into their eyes. I can't even say I'm laughing so much. It's true. Like, one of my favorite pastimes is to literally type Stylosa into the forum and see what comes up. In fact, I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to type it in because you just get hated on for no reason. Like, I just literally do not understand why people, like, why they so, let's go, I'm doing it, right, okay. So here we go. YouTube thumbnails are one of the most miserable things on the internet. Now, I agree, but this is YouTube and you have to do these things. That's no bugger watches your video. And somebody's quoted this and said, Stylosa himself being number 2. You see what I mean? It's just like, what? Anyway, that's the Overwatch forums for you. Anyway, let's get into the post from Andy. So this is what he says. This has been a reoccurring theme in conversation since the PvP livestream. Now, this is just in response to the forum post, which is, why do people think tanks are getting buffed in 5v5? Tank players want to understand their role in a new 5v5 world. I talked to the hero design and balance team about this thread and have summed up some thoughts below. Tanks in Overwatch 2 remain both disruptive line breakers and push leading protectors. Changing from 2 tanks to 1 creates a new dynamic where each player, including damage and supports, needs to be more careful about the way they position themselves. Flanking potentially becomes more potent as a strategy, and because teams aren't relying on holding the high ground due to the defensive capabilities of multiple tanks, maps are being used to their fullest, which has resulted in some fun playtests. Tanks will still be the unquestioned authority on blocking damage. However, they won't be simultaneously contending with the opposing tank, blocking nearly all incoming damage for their team. Changing to a single tank means that they will be tuned to be slightly tougher on the individual level. tanks with overwhelming team defensive capabilities like Reinhardt will have their group protections reduced, while their damage and utility will be improved. Now, we've seen this on the PvP livestream, and in fact, the footage running in the background of this video is showing you some New York gameplay. Now, Reinhardt is the one to kind of focus on here, because we know, or well, at least we know the changes to Reinhardt as of April this year were essentially to give him 2 fire strike charges and allow him to cancel his charge. And also they've changed his shield as well. But cancelling the charge has got a very interesting component, because when you cancel it, it actually recharges much quicker. So you can charge, cancel, and then go for the charge again. You're going to be able to do it faster, but also introduces different elements of play where you can fake charge the enemy, cancel it, and go straight into an Earth Shatter. Loads of elements like that. So you can see that Reinhardt is almost being changed into this brawler kind of character. And that again was another narrative they were pushing forward, saying that, you know what, we might be changing the tank category away from tank to brawler, because it's not really about protecting all of your team now. It's about just being a big beefy target, getting out there and creating space. It almost feels to me like what they're trying to do with tanks is get away from the tank that pushes through a choke, and more so towards a tank which creates an area of play for their team to make plays in. And that in turn makes the tank more of a play orientated hero. Instead of it being Reinhardt just walking forward with the barrier up, it now becomes Reinhardt getting into an area and trying to control it with his increased damage output and his sort of ability to fake charge people in a way. I think that's what they're trying to do. But of course, the knock-on effect of that means that every other hero, well, there's more onus put onto them to actually perform, because if you've got more space, and you know, we see a lot about, you see tank diff, you see DPS diff and all of that, don't you, if you play Overwatch these days? That's just referring to, oh, we've lost the game because their DPS was better or their tank was better. You're going to see more of that in Overwatch 2, because it's going to be more pronounced. It's going to be very obvious if you've got a good tank or a bad tank, or a good DPS or a bad DPS. Very, very obvious, I think. To address the pressure that a single tank position can put on an individual player, there is an assumption that if the tank dies, the fight is over. Realistically speaking, any player dying in a 5v5 scenario can mean a team fight loss for their team. So everyone is going to have a bit more pressure put on their individual performances. That said, tanks not being responsible for mitigating overwhelming damage for the entire team removes some pressure for the role. This also opens up an avenue for them to focus more on getting in the opposing team's face and pressuring with damage and disrupting enemy lines. In our playtests, we have observed an interesting dynamic where tanks are not usually the first to die. Support is better able to maintain their front line, creating a scenario where healing is more focused since it's not split trying to keep multiple tanks alive. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is one hell of a paragraph, because that straight up tells you the way tanks are going to operate in Overwatch 2. And also it says tanks in Overwatch 2 it's going to be a much more skillful role. You know, I don't want to throw shade on people here, but you know, I play tanks. I like Reinhardt. Reinhardt's a difficult hero to play, but you can get some decent value with Reinhardt just walking forward with your barrier. Look at Orisa. You put your barrier down in the right position and kind of just do Orisa stuff. You get quite a bit of value there. Look at it completely differently. Let's say D.Va. Very hard to get value from D.Va. You will see an extreme, like you can tell the difference straight away between a good D.Va player and an average D.Va player. With an average Reinhardt player and a good Reinhardt player, yeah, you can tell the difference, but you're still getting more bang for your buck with the average Reinhardt compared to the average D.Va. You get what I'm saying, guys? I'm not saying Reinhardt's an easier hero to play than D.Va. He's not, and D.Va's not easier to play than Reinhardt. The issue I've got, or what I'm trying to say, is it's much easier to get reward for doing the bare minimum with a Reinhardt than it is with a D.Va. A Moira is a good example of this in the support category, where you just kind of do Moira things and you get a lot of return, whereas if you were playing Anna, it'd be much more difficult to get that level of return. But again, they've both got pros and cons, all the heroes have, so hopefully I've kind of explained that. But what I really like about this here is it's straight up saying, look, tanks are not your damage mitigation tanks of old. Yeah, they are. Yeah, they can absorb some damage, but tanks are about getting in there and trying to make plays. So again, this will amplify the performance of the tank, because sure, the pressure is being reduced because you're not needing to keep your team alive as much, but the pressure is increasing because if you're not making the right plays, if you're not creating that space, you're going to suffer. You're just going to get flamed to hell and back. It's going to be mental. But I'm really looking forward to this, actually, because I think it's going to be like a brave new world for the tanks, especially if you're used to playing maybe overly defensively. Now it just seems to be like, hey, just get in there and just mash people's faces. Let's go. I mean, that That seems very alluring, if I'm honest, guys. I mean, what the hell? Double barrier team comps is another area directly impacted by this change. In Overwatch 2, there is a maximum of 1 shield tank per team, which leads to changes in how we tune and adjust the total uptime for these barriers. This comes in the form of lowering their health, increasing their cooldowns, or lowering their durations. We want barriers to feel impactful, albeit less oppressive, across the game. Again, you know, they did highlight this in the PvP stream. Double barrier is trash. I mean, if you guys watched Twitch over the last couple of days, a very famous player, XQC, you might know of him, he came back and jumped into some competitive, and then suddenly was like, oh god, it took ages to find a game, and then went straight into a double barrier game, and then was like, this game ain't changed for like the last 2 years, and then stopped playing the game again. Yeah, it's a sad state of affairs. That's not going to happen with Overwatch 2 because there's simply you can only have one tank, so there's no way double barrier is ever going to be a thing. But you can also see again addressing the issue of barriers being too strong. They're not going to be as powerful in Overwatch 2, but they want a barrier to still be a tool you can use, because barriers still do absorb damage. And instead of it being, you know, Reinhardt is the example here. Instead of it just Ryan walking forward with a barrier, now it becomes Ryan using his barrier only when he absolutely needs to use it. That is a huge change in the playstyle of that hero. Tanks rooted in mobility, such as D.Va, Wrecking Ball, and Winston, will see their utility improved, gaining additional defensive stopping power. And in some cases, more freedom to flex between having an offensive impact and being a defensive bulwark for the team. Now, we do kind of see a little change. Well, the only change we know of, actually, is the Winston change, which they've basically given him a alternate fire. Now, in the gameplay footage in the background, you guys can see that when it swaps to Winston, he's got the scatter arrow icon from Hanzo. That's just a placeholder icon. But basically what this is a short-range blast that he's got with alternate fire. So it's like a concentrated lightning blast, which you can fire at range. Now, this is to deal with Winston jumping in on someone, maybe doing enough damage to them with the damage from the impact of landing, maybe a quick melee, then primary fire into them. And then they turn around and run away. Now, on live, they'd run away and get away, right, in Overwatch 1. But in Overwatch 2, Winston's got the ability to zap them as they start running away. And that might secure kills, which might make Winston feel a lot better to play and makes him feel more offensive. So that's an example we've got there that we know is in the game, or at least we know was in Overwatch 2 at some point, if this is all still in the game come when we actually get more information on it. Because, again, this is all outdated from April, this info that we've got. We did also see some D.Va as well, and I believe they just increased the uptime of Defense Matrix. I'm not sure they did too much else to D.Va, but again, we'll have to wait and see what they do. Wrecking Ball, we've got no idea what they will do, although there is another post, which I'll get onto in a second, which goes into a little bit more detail on what could happen to Wrecking Ball. I do understand that some of us have very strong feelings about changing to a single tank, and it's going to take more than a response like this to fully convince you that this is a net positive change. To be completely candid, I understand that you need to get your hands on the game and experience it for yourself to fully form an opinion. As someone who was an Overwatch fan and player before I ever joined the team, I have a huge amount of empathy for folks who are frustrated waiting for Overwatch 2. Speaking as someone who plays retail comp nightly and playtest 2 almost daily, it's difficult to envision what the experience is actually like until you've been in the environment and played several matches. I sincerely do not mean this as in a gatekeepery or we know better than you tone, but more to create an understanding that we get your sentiment and understand where your feedback is coming from. Like I said at the top of the video, yeah, you know, that's just like, take it with a pinch of salt. Blizzard need better communication. But this is an example of better communication, so it's good. So if we see more of this, we're going to love it. It's going to be better for us. We've got more stuff to actually talk about. Because one of the issues, again, to go off on a little tangent here, is with Overwatch sort of community discussion, when there's nothing new happening, you end up in this sort of negative feedback loop where it's like, well, the game's the same, not much is changing, we've still got these same issues, but we also know they're working on Overwatch 2, but they're not telling us anything about it, yada, yada, yada. So people start getting more and more negative throughout the whole community. And to be honest, it's justified because you do feel left out. You want to be involved in some way in what the hell is going on with the game. You want to know what's happening. And I enjoy making these videos for you guys as well, because I sit here and I love reading about Overwatch, and I love just, I mean, I don't need to say this. I made thousands of videos on the bloody game, but like, I just love it. I just love talking about Overwatch, and I want new stuff to talk about. So even little bits like this, it gets me super hyped, and I love talking about it. All right, let's move on to the next little post here. So this again is from Andy, and this, he quotes Zephyrin, and Zephyrin says, With reduction of CC all round and evidently a mobility creep with tanks to make them more aggro, plus the announced mobility creep with DPS, there seems to be less and less capability to deal with flankers and hyper mobility. And the community manager responds, "This concern is something we're paying close attention to in our playtests. So far, we've seen that heroes like Doomfist, Wrecking Ball, and to some degree Tracer will need to be rebalanced and maybe even nerfed to make sure they're not super overpowered in the new meta. Changes like the ones we've discussed in the PvP livestream and here in this thread are incredibly complicated. They have far-reaching ramifications throughout the game. Your question correctly assumes that they can never be evaluated in a vacuum." Yeah, so what we're getting to there is Doomfist, Tracer, Wrecking Ball on bigger maps with less players are way more powerful because they can go off and do their own thing. They almost get a map buff because they're buffed by bigger maps, more intricate maps, maps with more cover on, and they're also buffed because there's less players, so they have to, well, they've got to worry about less people attacking them. They've got less targets to focus on. Basically becomes a lot easier for them. Now, there's probably going to be people out there laughing at this because Doomfist isn't really in a great state at the moment. He's okay. I think he's generally in the sort of, I guess, the top 50%, I want to say, of DPS heroes. But he's very feast or famine, right? You either kill everyone or the enemy counters you and you die. This is because they just use crowd control on you. So it's a very valid point here that Zephyrin says of, you know what, less CC in Overwatch 2 because you guys have said that. What about Doomfist? He's just going to be invulnerable? Well, it looks like he is invulnerable, so Blizzard are trying to do stuff to change that. Now, again, remember what I said, in a 5v5 world, Doomfist, if he just hides somewhere and just comes in off the top ropes, wipes out your, I don't know, your Anna or something instantly, you're just like, okay, and then off he goes, hiding again for the next 10 years in the map to jump out and kill somebody else. Yeah, that's not going to be a good gaming experience, so it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that. But again, this is all of us coming at it from a Overwatch perspective, not an Overwatch 2 perspective. But the thing I'll end this video with, guys, is thank God we've actually got something new to talk about, and good job on talking to us, Overwatch community manager, I guess. Do more of it. Give us more of this. We like it. All right, guys, thanks for watching the video. And as ever, leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. Are you looking forward to 5v5 Overwatch 2? Are you even looking forward to Overwatch 2? I know it's been a long slog. It's definitely been a long slog for me. I believe you not. I get that more than most because you have to understand, like, for years and years and years, it's been my thing that I do, and there's just been nothing to talk about for ages, and it really is soul destroying. All right, guys, thank you for watching the video, and yeah, leave a like and all of that stuff. It really does help the video. YouTube loves it, and yeah, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Toodaloo.